from my new sweater. Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Knitted by Whitney podcast. I know it's been a while since I've released a video, and I will talk about that. But first, I want to wish you all, if you celebrate Christmas, a very, very Merry Christmas. And if you celebrate a different holiday, very happy holidays to you all. As you can see behind me, we are in the Christmas spirit here in Nova Scotia. We actually got a snowstorm today. Not a big one, just a little one, but it's enough of a snowstorm that we didn't feel that we wanted to go out on the road. So we're having a cozy day at home, enjoying the beautiful snow outside. I love that our backyard really looks like a snow globe because we have a lot of fir trees. So the snow really sticks to them and it just looks so Christmassy and it's so beautiful. And as you can tell, I've also changed my setup a bit. Instead of my usual tropical plant next to me, I have our Christmas tree. I'm so happy to have the tree out. Doyle and I are slowly but surely getting into the Christmas spirit, and one of my favorite ways to get into the Christmas spirit is with our Christmas tree. And you can tell there's quite an eclectic array of ornaments. There's a lot that are handmade by myself or my close friends and family. There's some fun ones that I picked out as a kid. Of course, Doyle has some that are more his style. And I have some very special ones that I have had since I was really little that my mom gave to me when I moved out with Doyle so I could put them on my tree. But anyway, it is looking festive here. Very excited about it. I'm also a little festive up here, but this jingle jangles a lot, so I'm gonna take it off for now. Before I get into the episode, I just want to talk a little bit about why I haven't released a video in a while. First of all, I haven't released one in a while because I had a project that didn't work out and I just didn't want to do a video about a project that I was gonna frog because it wasn't really my style to bash a pattern, and I don't want to do that. I don't think it's a nice thing to do. So I just thought I'll just skip an episode and I'll wait and do another episode when I knit my next item. So that's what happened. So I would have finished that project. I did finish that project in October, so I would have had a video in October, but unfortunately you've had to wait until now in December. Another reason why I haven't podcasted in a while is because I haven't been knitting a whole lot. I'm going to talk about my finished item soon, but I sort of took some time away from knitting during the past 2 months. I got back into a series. I reread one of my favorite series. Very excited to talk about that in my book review section. But another reason why I haven't done a lot of knitting is because Doyle and I got engaged. So we've just been really enjoying spending some time together and doing things together and just feeling the love, feeling a lot of the love. So yeah, we got engaged in November. I will post a picture here. We booked a cozy cabin getaway back in November, and we decided to check out some waterfalls while we were there. And we went to one of the falls. I had brought my tripod with us because the past few times that we'd gone on hikes with our dog Rooster, we couldn't get a good picture of the three of us without my tripod. We would like try and set up the camera on a backpack and it would always fall over. So this time when we went, I said, I'm gonna bring my tripod this time. And I set it up. We took a bunch of pictures together. And then Doyle said, let's just do one more. And I said, yeah, okay, no problem. So I set it up. It's a 10-second timer. We got into position. And then Doyle said, just a minute, I'll be right back. And he went over to his bag, grabbed something out of his bag, came back, knelt down and had the ring. And we got it on film. And I'm just so ecstatic that we got that on film because it was the perfect moment. So when Doyle and I were talking about getting married and what I would like the engagement to be like, I was very adamant that I wanted it to be just the two of us. I didn't want it to happen at like a family event or at a restaurant or anywhere that there would be a lot of people or especially a lot of strangers. I said I want it to be a private moment between the two of us. But I also said, if it's possible, I would love to be able to capture the moment because I love seeing the photos and videos of people getting engaged, especially when the girl doesn't know that it's happening. And I just think it's so cute and it's so special. So Doyle managed to figure out a way to have that happen for us. And I was just beyond happy. And I cried a lot because I cry at everything. But my heart is just so full of love. And I feel so honored to be getting married to the man that I love. And of course I'm crying again now. But I love him so much, and it's so exciting to be looking ahead at this next step in our lives. And you know, we're going to take our time, we're going to enjoy being engaged. We're not going to rush into a wedding, but we've already started jotting down ideas, and it's very exciting to plan this next part of our lives and just bask in the love. And anyway, we're so happy. And that was one of the reasons why I didn't knit very much, was because I was just enjoying being in love with my now fiance, and it was just so wonderful. So knitting took a bit of a backseat, but that's okay. So now you know why I haven't recorded a video in a while. Let's get into the video itself. I'm going to start off with my mug of the episode, and this is a very special mug for me. My soon-to-be mother-in-law has created a mug with my logo. So my soon-to-be mother-in-law has a Cricut machine, and she got it for her birthday, and we bought her some vinyl for it, and she was just so excited trying it out and creating new things that when we were there, she asked me if there was anything that she could make for me. And I said, actually, I would love a mug with my logo on it for my YouTube channel. She already knew that I had a YouTube channel, and she's seen the first episode. She really likes it. And I said, I would love it if you could put this on a mug for me. So she said, do you have the picture? And I said, oh yeah, I do. It's on my phone. I'll just send it to you. And she whizzed it up in, no word of a lie, less than 5 minutes. And she wanted to do it smaller than this. I wanted it to be kind of big so it would wrap around the mug, but it has my logo on it. So this is the logo that I also have on the little leather tags that I put on gifts that I knit for people, which, as you know from my previous videos, I don't do very often. So I like them to have that beautiful little extra touch to them. But now I also have it on a mug. And I am drinking some very special tea today. I have been heavily influenced by my fellow knitting podcasting friends over in England, particularly Lucy of This Nanny Knits, and also Anushka of the Crimson Stitchery, who have sung the praises of Bird and Blend Tea Company. And oh my goodness, their tea is amazing. Lucy has been opening their tea advent calendar every day for her Vlogmas videos this year. And every one that she opens, I'm thinking, oh, that sounds so good. Oh, I really want to try that. So after her first few Vlogmas videos, I thought, that's it, I'm doing it. I'm ordering some Bird and Blend tea. It's gonna be expensive, it's gonna take forever to get here, but I'm gonna do it. And you know what? A, it wasn't that expensive to ship to Canada, and B, it arrived in less than a week. I was shocked. But anyway, I ordered some really tasty flavors, and today I'm drinking my favorite of them, which is called Terry's Tea, and it is a chocolate orange flavor mimicking the Terry's chocolate orange, which is one of my favorite Christmas treats, and it's so delicious as a tea. So with that, cheers! It's just so good. And now, let's get into my latest finished project. I am currently wearing my first ever finished colorwork sweater. Actually, it's my first ever colorwork sweater in general. I've never done colorwork in a sweater before. I did it once for a headband and it worked out okay. And I tried it once for a hat and it didn't go okay. So I was kind of scared of colorwork for a long time, but I found this pattern and I absolutely love it. This is the Into the Woods jumper by Melody Hoffman, otherwise known as Mandarin on YouTube and B Mandarin on Instagram. I will include those written below at the bottom of the screen because I probably butchered the pronunciation because I haven't spoken French in a while and I used to be really good at it in high school, but if you don't use it, you lose it. And I have not used it. But I first discovered Melody through my YouTube discovery page. YouTube noticed that I'd been watching a lot of British knitting podcasters, so they thought, hey, check out some other European knitting podcasters. Melody's based out of France, and I just fell in love with her videos instantly. Her videos are different than most knitting podcasts, which is what I loved about them. They're very cinematic. Instead of sitting and chatting, showing things off that she's working on, etc., etc., Melody shows little snippets of her life. And, you know, some of them are as simple as just her making her morning coffee. But it's so beautiful. And she has wonderful music that's nice and relaxing. It's soft jazzy, it's lo-fi, and it's so beautiful. And, you know, if I could use one word to describe all of her podcast videos, it would be tranquil. It's very soothing to watch. It's very calming. I love watching them if I've had a busy day at work and I just want to have a quiet lunchtime. I'll put on one of her videos and I'll knit while watching the video. And it just sort of helps me pause and slow down and just enjoy something really beautiful. So I first discovered her YouTube channel, started watching a lot of that. I went back and watched a lot of her older videos. She's been doing a podcast for many years, but I think I only went back maybe 2 years. And I quickly learned by watching her videos that she is a knitwear designer. So I thought, okay, I'll check out her stuff. And like I fell in love with her videos, I fell in love with her designs. Melody's designs are so beautiful. But what I loved the most about them is that they are very much inspired by function. So Melody designs pieces that she wants in her handmade wardrobe. And she makes sure that they look beautiful, but also that they serve a function. And that really stood out to me because I've spoken in some of my earlier episodes about how I'm trying to fill the gaps that are in my handmade wardrobe and focus on knitting something that I actually want to wear. For example, my last episode, I talked about the Elizabeth Bennet linen tee, how I didn't have a lot of warm weather knitwear, and having a knitted item made out of linen that is nice and cool for hot weather, but also it's basically a really nice t-shirt. I can wear it all the time, and it's just super functionable for my life. I was thinking the same way when I was looking at Melody's patterns because that's really the whole ethos behind what she decides to design. And when I looked at her patterns, I instantly, this one jumped out at me. It was the Into the Woods jumper. And I thought to myself, I'm gonna try colorwork. I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to try a colorwork sweater. And let me tell you, this was the perfect pattern to choose. This is an awesome pattern to do if you're new to colorwork sweaters, which I was brand new to colorwork sweaters, never done it before. But it is a little bit challenging, but also it's very easy to get into the rhythm of working the stitches. And luckily, you're not doing the color work every single row. So you get a bit of a reprieve after doing the important row. So it's kind of great because it allows you to just slowly get into color work, and really, because it's the same stitch over and over again, you get to practice it. And it's very easy to get into the rhythm of doing it. And once you're into the rhythm of doing it, it is addictive. It's very addictive. I loved creating these little tree stitches. And before I saw this pattern, I'd actually never seen this stitch before. But since I did this sweater, I've seen it in a couple of other patterns. And it's really cool how it works. And now that I see those other patterns, I think to myself, well, I know how to do that. I can do that. So it's now opening more doors to me for doing more patterns with stitches like this. It's making me feel very emboldened to try more challenging color work patterns. But it's making me very, very excited because it's opening this door to me that I was always thinking to myself, okay, no, don't want to do that. That's too hard for me. That's too challenging. I'm not ready for that. But after doing this pattern, I feel ready for it. So let me tell you more about this sweater. I chose to knit size 5 of this pattern. I don't have the pattern with me, so I can't remember what the bust measurement is, but I think it's either 50 or 51 inch. And I was good. I did a gauge swatch for this pattern because the yarn that Melody uses in the design is called Plötulopi, and it's a very specific Icelandic yarn that is unspun. So it sort of has the same weight and feel of a blown yarn, but it has no strength to it until it's knitted. Because if you pull too hard on the yarn, it just breaks apart because it's not spun tightly to hold the fibers together. And I knew that I wasn't going to be going out to buy this specific type of Icelandic wool. I have used Icelandic wool before. It's not my favorite. It has a time and a place. Certain people absolutely love it. I do not. It is the scratchiest thing I have ever felt. Other than the Nova Scotia grown and spun linen that I tried at one of my local yarn stores this summer. That was like fisherman's rope. But Icelandic wool is close behind. Anyway, so I decided, first and foremost, well, I'm not using that yarn. I'm gonna have to find something else. And I took a look in my stash first, and I'm very proud to say that this sweater is all knit with stash yarn. I'm very excited about that because I've mentioned in previous videos that I would like to work more with my stash. It's a goal of mine. And when I was deciding what yarn I wanted to use for this pattern, I thought to myself, I was thinking about knitting it in early October, and I started it in later October. So of course, at that time, Nova Scotia was full of beautiful fall colors. So I thought to myself, I want to use colors that speak fall to me. So I found in my stash, first of all, this beautiful rusty orange. This is Cascades 220, and the color is ginger. And I had enough of it to do the tree stitches. So I thought, okay, there's one color. What do I want my background color to be? And I looked at some of the other projects that were done by other knitters, and I noticed right away I gravitated more towards the projects that didn't have a high level of contrast. I remember seeing one project where the main color was beige and the trees were black. I really didn't like that look for myself. Beautiful sweater, but it wasn't me. It didn't speak to me. So I thought, okay, I need two colors that go together but are not super high contrast. So I looked at other projects and I noticed that there were people that did colors that were too similar, like two different shades of blue. And that didn't offer enough of a contrast for me. So it was kind of hard to find the right balance. So when I was looking through my stash, I didn't have any other worsted yarn that would go with the rusty orange color, but I had 2 fingering weight yarns that happened to be hunter green, my absolute favorite fall color. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm gonna gauge this. I'm gonna test this, see if it works out. And by going up a needle size, I hit gauge spot on. Well, let me rephrase that. I hit the stitch gauge spot on. I was so thrilled. But my row gauge was off, which is not something that a lot of people teach you how to fix. The only sort of advice that I've seen if your row gauge is off is either if your row gauge is too long, knit less. If your row gauge is too short, knit more. Mine was too long, so I didn't really know how to knit less while still doing the color work, while still getting the stitch counts correct for the yoke and the sleeves and everything. So I just thought to myself, well, it'll just be a little big. That's fine, I can live with that. So my 2 green yarns that I used are Fleece Artist Vine in the color Balsam, which is this beautiful, slightly variegated tweedy yarn that is locally dyed here in Nova Scotia. It's actually dyed maybe like an hour away from my house, like it's not far at all. So I love that there are so many beautiful yarns available right here in my own province, an hour away from me. So cool. And I held that with Knit Pick Stroll in Aurora Heather, I think it is, which is the exact same color green as the Fleece Artist. So honestly, I don't think you can tell that this is 2 yarns held together. I certainly can't tell, and I knitted it. But I just loved the contrast of the rusty orange and the dark green. They really spoke to me because they're both nature colors, they're both tree colors, because, you know, obviously in the fall you see all of the leaves turning orange, but here in Nova Scotia there's also a lot of evergreen trees, a lot of fir trees, so you still have those like really deep green trees next to the maples that are, or the oaks that are all changing color and becoming this beautiful rusty orange color. So as soon as I did them together, I just thought, oh my gosh, I love it. I just absolutely love it. And I loved making this sweater. I think it's mostly because of my yarn choices. So I did mention before about how it was a very addictive knit to make, especially with these tree stitches. And I've mentioned in previous podcasts that I'm a project knitter. I like to knit for what I'm going to get at the end. But with this project, I fell in love with the process. It was a joy to take this project out of its bag and do another few rows while watching TV with Doyle or at lunch at work. And it just filled me with so much joy. And it got me so excited for what I was going to get at the end. But at the same time, just enjoying sitting and knitting on it brought me the same level of joy. So I really love this project for that reason alone. I did have some hiccups happen. Like I mentioned, my row gauge was off, and nowhere is that more clear than my sleeves. So if you can tell, my sleeves are already kind of long, like they're already down to about my thumb knuckle. But what you don't know unless you've seen the pattern is that my sleeves are all decreases and then a cuff. That's all. When I did my first sleeve, that's when I realized that my row gauge was really off. I hadn't noticed it so much when I did my gauge swatch, but I did notice it when I finished my decreases, tried on my sleeve, and realized, oh, it's already at my wrist. Well then, I don't need to do the straight section. I can just move straight along to the cuff. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to do as long of a cuff as the pattern tells you to do, because otherwise I would probably have sleeves that look like this. And I didn't really want sleeves that looked like that. I wanted more of a sweater that the sleeves sat where they were supposed to. But anyway, it did save me from doing more work on the sleeves, which was okay. And I'm not upset about them. I do kind of wish that the wrists were a little snugger. I wish I had a longer ribbed cuff because I like a longer ribbed cuff, but I can't be mad at it. It's still beautiful. I absolutely love it. And I decided from the get-go that I was going to modify the length of the sweater. The original pattern is a slightly cropped sweater, and I decided not to do that just because I knew with doing color work, it's going to be doubly thick wherever the color work is, and this is thick. So that means it's gonna be super warm. When I look at my wardrobe, I don't wear very warm, thick, cozy, cropped sweaters. If I'm gonna wear something cropped, it's going to be with either a high-waisted skirt or potentially leggings. When I wear something that is thick and cozy, I like long sweaters, boots, maybe a fuzzy hat. Sometimes I wear it in place of a jacket. So the two just didn't match up well for my particular style, my particular wardrobe. So I decided to just make it a little longer. And I didn't have to knit much longer than the pattern recommended because of my gauge issue, which I talked about. So my body is only maybe 2 inches longer than it was recommended in the pattern, but my yoke is also a few inches longer. So if I hold up my arm, my sweater comes out to about here. My actual armpit is way in here. So there's quite a bit of extra yoke, but again, like I said, it's a cozy sweater. I'm not upset that it's a big sweater. In fact, I feel like that makes it even cozier. So yeah, it's different than the pattern, but it's unique and it fits me perfectly. I'm so happy with the fit. Like I mentioned, I knit size 5, and I was very happy to see that Melody had a great size range. I'm actually one of the middle sizes. I think she goes up to size 8. But I was very happy that she had a wide range of sizes. She was very size inclusive. Very, very excited about that. And of course, I now have multiple more of her patterns on my list of things that I want to knit. And she has a new pattern coming up very soon, which I've been waiting for a few months. So I'm very excited to get to knit that when it comes out. I think it's supposed to come out this week, fingers crossed. But yeah, I'm very excited to have found a new designer for me to fall in love with and find lots of designs that they have made that fit my body, which is always the worry about being a plus size knitter. Finding a pattern that you like and then realizing, oh, that doesn't go up to my size. Or worse, finding out you're just outside the size range, so you then try and mathematically figure out how to make it work for you, which is just a headache in the end. Don't do it, it's not worth it. So it's always exciting to find another size inclusive designer that I didn't know about already. So I love that. And like I mentioned before, I fell in love with Melody's patterns because they serve a function as well as look pretty. So I'm gonna have a lot of Melody Hoffman sweaters in my wardrobe, I think. So a question that I usually ask myself whenever I finish a project and when I share it with you here on YouTube is, will I make this sweater again? And I'm gonna tell you, I love Melody's patterns, but I'm not gonna make this one again. And I'll tell you why. I feel like I have made the perfect version of this sweater. I really don't feel that I could go out and get different yarn and make it again, maybe try and fix my gauge issues and end up with a sweater that I love just as much. I feel like I'm always gonna reach for this one before I would reach for another one that I make in different colors and different yarns. So I really don't want to do that. I want to really enjoy this sweater. I don't feel like I need multiples of it because again, it serves a function. So why do I need more than one thing to serve that function? Some people do. Some people want to have multiples of the same pattern that they really love. But for me, I want to explore more of Melody's other patterns. I have one in mind right now. She one of her most recent releases is her Wild Posy sweater. And I have some more stash yarn that I want to use for that pattern. It's actually stash yarn that I frogged from another project that I just wasn't wearing, but I loved the yarn for, so I'm going to use that again. So I think I'm going to have another really exciting process knit because I'm going to A, love the pattern, and B, love the yarn. So I'm very excited to do that. One of my best knitting friends is actually interested in doing a knit along together where we both make that pattern. So that might happen soon. So yeah, I absolutely adore this pattern. Full 5 stars for this pattern. It's one of my favorite things that I've ever made for myself. But I don't want to make it again because I don't want to repeat something that's already perfect. And I feel that I'll go through all that work to make it again and not enjoy it as much as I enjoy this one. And then that's just sad. It doesn't seem worth it at that point. Anyway, this is my Into the Woods jumper. And if you love this stitch pattern, Melody has a couple patterns that have this stitch pattern. She has a scarf and cowl pattern, and she has a sock pattern. So if you are a cowl person or a sock person, check those out. I'll link them below. So that was my experience of knitting the Into the Woods jumper by Melody Hoffman. And I love it. I love it so much. It just brings me so much joy. And I love the pictures that Doyle took for me yesterday. They're so beautiful. We're gonna take our family Christmas photos today with the snow in the background with our dog. And it's gonna be so cute. I'm so excited to share them. Hopefully I can pop one right here so you can see what it looks like. But it's one of those things that even though I knit it with fall colors in mind, it still feels Christmassy because it has the trees. So I'm very excited to wear this for our Christmas photo. I have 2 books to share with you for my book review section of the video. Now, I don't know what your holiday traditions are, but in my house, growing up, we love to make cookies. And one of my aunts actually recently gifted us a tin of sweets that she makes us every year. I actually have a couple over here waiting. This is a tree that I've already taken a bite out of the top of. She makes delicious gingerbread cookies, some shortbreads, and all kinds of other really delicious cookies. But I also love to bake myself. And this year, I'm going to be making some cookies out of Mrs. Fields' cookie book. If you've never heard of this book, it is done by the woman who created the Mrs. Fields cookie brand. Her name actually is Debbie Fields, so she is the original Mrs. Fields. But in North America, there is a chain of cookies, of a company that sells cookies called Mrs. Fields, and it is done by her. So we had this book in my house growing up. My dad is the cook in my family, and he loves cookbooks, and he collected a lot of cookbooks. And one of the ones that he collected was Mrs. Fields' cookie book. And I remember always seeing it on the shelf, and as a kid, of course, I'm drawn to the book with cookies all over it. I wonder why, right? They just look so appetizing. I just want to lick the cover sometimes. This is not the exact copy that I grew up with. My family had a hardback copy, and I really wish that I could have that copy, but my mom got rid of it when they were getting rid of all the cookbooks because my dad likes to keep things. My mom likes to get rid of things. And even though I had always told them how much I loved this cookbook, unfortunately, it made its way to a secondhand store. That's okay. I bought my own copy. I got this just this past year, I think, because I knew my parents were going to be going away for Christmas this year. My parents are actually snowbirds, so they went to Florida for the winter months, and I knew I wanted to be doing some things to sort of keep my family around me in spirit. So I thought, well, I'm gonna make some cookies out of this book that we always had growing up. And I'm going to do them with Doyle. So we're going to start some of our own traditions, and we're very, very much looking forward to having a quiet Christmas together, just the two of us. Of course, with the Omicron variant of COVID going around right now, it doesn't feel very safe to get together in large numbers. So we're going to have just a quiet Christmas between the two of us, and we're going to feel safe and happy that way. But we're going to try and create some new traditions for ourselves. So of course, one of the things we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing some Christmas baking together. And let me tell you, there must be about 100 cookie recipes in this book, and I feel like I want to make almost all of them. But I have a few that I'm going to be making this Christmas. The first of which is probably my favorite recipe in the entire book. It's definitely the recipe in the book that I have made more than any other since I was a little kid. I always loved making snowy white chocolate crescents. These are essentially horseshoes of chocolate cookie covered in icing sugar. What kid doesn't love that? What adult for that matter, right? So I'm very excited to be making those and introducing Doyle to these cookies. I also want to make a cranberry orange scone that my dad makes, and I'm going to be making that this year. Doyle made some gingerbread today, an actual loaf of gingerbread. The house smells amazing. And we're going to be doing some really fun Christmas cooking. We're going to be making beef pot pies and just doing all kinds of cozy things and getting together with family virtually and just enjoying a wonderful time at home with our animals and everything like that. So this is book number 1 of my book review, this video. If you haven't checked out Mrs. Fields' cookie book, I highly recommend it. There's so many amazing cookies in here. There's some obviously that I will never make because they're just really, really involved. They're just too challenging for me, but I love looking at them. Like caramel chocolate tartlets, they look so good. But it's just one of those things that I think, will I actually take the time and effort to make those? Probably not. But there's also some that are a little involved that I have made. So I have made the fruit-filled dreams. They're so good. I've always wanted to make the chocolate dreams. I might make those this year. I might not have time because I don't want to be spending every single day baking. Also, I don't think Doyle's and my blood pressure could handle having so many cookies all the time. Oh, sorry. I mean, our blood sugar couldn't handle having dozens and dozens of cookies over the next week or two. And of course, there's another one in here. They're so simple, but they're so delicious. They're called marbles. So they are a sour cream and chocolate cookie. It sounds weird, but it's really, really good. And it sort of like reminds me of cheesecake almost. They're so delicious. So, you know, there's easy cookies in here. There's hard cookies in here. There's fancy dessert bars that I will probably never make, like creamy chocolate fantasies. But they're like a multi-step cookie. And anything that has to do with piping, I'm just not skilled enough to do anything that requires a piping bag. But anyway, yeah, if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend Mrs. Fields' cookie book. Very nostalgic. It's very 90s, but it's so fun. So my second book that I want to talk about for my book review this episode is technically a series. It is the Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah Moss, which I talked about in my last episode. So I won't talk a ton about it this time around because I'm sure you're already tired of hearing me talk about it. But I'm currently reading the short novella after the original trilogy, and that is called A Court of Frost and Starlight. And it's a perfect time to read this book because in the book they're celebrating winter solstice, which if I release this video on Tuesday like I plan to, it will be the winter solstice, which is what they celebrate in this book. And they celebrate it the same way that we would celebrate Christmas. So it feels like it's a great holiday read because I'm getting into the Christmas spirit, reading about people celebrating solstice, which is like their Christmas. And there's lots of snow and everything, We have snow as well. So it feels very timely to read this right now. Also, it's just like a really sweet little story that takes place after the very action-packed, emotionally charged events of the trilogy. I don't want to give anything away in case people haven't read the books, but essentially it starts off with a retelling of the Beauty and the Beast story, and then it quickly expands far beyond that. So a trend with Sarah Maas's books is that she starts off with a relatively simple story that as the series goes on, in later books, it just expands and it's so amazing to read. It's an excellent reading experience because you think you know how everything is going to play out, but you're wrong. You're only seeing a small part of the picture. She's looking at the big picture and she's slowly showing you more of that picture. And it's just incredible to read. So it's my absolute favorite fantasy series I think I've ever read. She's definitely my favorite fantasy author by far. But if you haven't read her books, I highly, highly recommend them. I started my reread in November because I recently managed to snag some of Explorer Knits and Fibers Akatar yarn, and I am just so excited to get it. I'm so excited. I have really big plans for that yarn when it arrives, but it's very special to me because it represents this series, and this series is one of my favorite books ever. So it felt like a good time to reread the series, and I'm now onto the novella, and I still haven't decided if I'm going to reread A Court of Silver Flames, the newest book in the series. Just because Doyle and I always exchange books on Christmas Eve. That's a tradition that we started last year. So, you know, it's already like getting close to Christmas Eve, so I don't want to be knee deep in that book and not be able to read my new Christmas Eve book. So I might just slowly pick at this one and finish it just in time to read the new book that Doyle is getting me for Christmas Eve. So I might read that one after Christmas Eve, but who knows? We'll wait and see. But anyway, I was looking at my Goodreads earlier today, and this is not the first time I've read this book this year. This is actually my second time reading this particular book this year. I previously read it in February, right before I read A Court of Silver Flames for the first time. So, because I wanted to sort of reacquaint myself with where the characters were right before the events of that book, which was taking place directly after this one. So, and this is only a short novella. It's only, let's see, it's only about 200 pages. So it's short. But anyway, yeah, I'm reading this book for the second time this year alone, which I didn't realize until I looked at it earlier today. But just goes to show you how much I love Sarah Maas's books. That's okay. We all have our favorite things, you know. I have books on my shelf that I've read a dozen times. Honestly, I have on my shelf. I gotta go get it just because I'm talking about it. I'll be right back. So, everyone has a favorite book, and everyone has a book that they've read multiple times. I have a hard time choosing my favorite book. I would say that A Court of Mist and Fury is absolutely hands down my favorite adult book. But when it comes to kids' books, I usually say that The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster is my favorite book as a kid's book. But very, very, very close second is this book right here, which is called Cat's Eye Corner by Terry Griggs. And a lot of people have not heard of this book because it's a Canadian book. And a lot of Canadian books don't really get out there as much as American and British books. I first discovered this book at my local library, and I was just immediately drawn in by the story. The story is a boy named Olivier goes to visit his grandfather and his grandfather's third wife, who he calls his step-grandma, because she's the third wife and he wants to keep her at an arm's length because she's a bit of a witch. So he goes to visit them for the summer, and his grandmother gives him a scavenger hunt list to try and do while he's there to entertain him and give him something fun to do. And the whole book is about wordplay. And I did an English major. I became a library technician. I work with books all day because I love words. And as a kid, with my particular personality and brain, I loved books like this. And The Phantom Toll Booth, which is also another really fun wordplay-y book. So I swear I have read this book upwards of a dozen times. And it's just a short book. It's only about 160 pages. I can sit down and read this in like 2 hours and I'll finish it because I just inhale this book. I've always loved it. So it's definitely not something new for me to reread a book that I love. So twice in a year, pretty par for the course for me. So with that, I will sign off this episode and wish you all a very happy holiday season. Take time for yourself and take time for those that you love. And with that, everyone take care. Bye.